I'm Nick Richardson. I lead a team of architects and software designers in the Design Authority for Stark. I've been at Stark almost 2.5 years.
And my name's Lucy Holder, and I'm the Commercial Strategy Lead for Market-Wide Half-Hourly Settlement. And I've been at Stark over 7 years.
Because it's the biggest change that's happened in the energy industry for 40 years, it's given us a fantastic challenge, but it's also a fantastic opportunity to look at some of our systems that we can refresh, we can update, we can improve. So it's shaken up perhaps it's shaken up teams, because we've had to kind of think about more effective ways of working in order to meet the strict timelines and milestones. So we've really started afresh, if you like, and we've said, okay, how best can we reorganise ourselves such that we can work at these accelerated and aggressive timelines? And also, everything's on the table. We assessed all our systems that either are central, obviously, to MHHS and indeed sort of peripheral, and we took it as an opportunity to revitalise the technology team and, our products and services. I suppose the easiest way of answering that is, firstly, the sheer sort of volume of data that, and when we say data, we don't mean just the actual data from the meter that we collect, but there's an awful lot of data that's exchanged between participants to enable, for example, a supplier will appoint us to a meter, so we will have to finish that. There's a whole lot of messages that are exchanged just to be appointed.
Yeah.
So we have to complete the process that builds up to us being able to collect data in a more timely manner, and then obviously begin collecting that data and processing that data. And when we say process, we're largely thinking about if there are incomplete readings coming from that meter, then we still have to perform estimation for that particular meter point. And all of that processing of data and exchanging of messages has to be done essentially at a much faster rate.
Yeah.
And you couple that with a larger number of meters, i.e. in time, all meters or all meter points in the country, having to be capable of recording data in half-hourly periods. There's just, so if you imagine a single meter reading is a small bit of data, but 48 interval readings is considerably more data. So the speed at which we need to process data and the sheer volume of data that will be going through the sort of central industry systems and into our systems, that's a big technology challenge. Broadly speaking, there are challenges that are to do with scale and speed, and then there's just challenges of we need to rewrite everything.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the frustrations that our customers experience, that things don't happen quick enough. They want Stark to be appointed as their meter operator, their data collector in today's world, and that activity doesn't happen quick enough. Obviously, with market-wide half-hourly settlement, we currently process something called the D flows over the data transfer network, the DTN. That's now changing as well, isn't it? And we've now got something called the DIP, the Data Integration Platform. So is that going to help that activity become faster, slicker?
It is. So I can answer that in two ways. So the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
But during the initial phases of market-wide half-hourly settlement, there will still be some message exchanged, the old D-flow type messages over the DTN. Good chunk of the existing sort of messaging choreography is indeed switching to an entirely new format and being processed through a central system, the DIP. The advantages that will in time bring as more and more messages are transferred from the old method, which is sort of carrier pigeon, if you like, through to this kind of instant messaging system.
Yeah, more real time.
Real time is that the benefits of market-wide half-hourly will accelerate. In the initial phases, the initial priority is to kind of get all the MPANs in the country capable of reporting half-hourly consumption data and working through the DIP as against the GTN.
Yeah. I think that just leans in even more into why market-wide half-hourly is so essential and why it requires this huge program and intervention to ensure that we can work in this way moving forward, because of all the things like this that are involved to get us moving quicker and processing data and information quicker. We do a really good job of it now, but if every single meter is half-hourly settled, as you've alluded to, the vast amount of data that we're now going to have available to us as a metering and data service provider, but also that the industry will have available, is going to be huge, and making sure that's all sort of matched up and processed sufficiently and reaches the end customer and the supplier and whoever else needs to see that data is going to be quite important.
Yeah, 100%. And there's another sort of advantage that MHHS will bestow is there will be more centralisation of sort of single sources of truth.
Yeah.
So as it is at the moment, data accuracy in the industry, can be a challenge, but over time we would expect to see improvement in data quality simply because there will be a single source of truth about, for example, what is the site address of an MPAN, what is the correct postcode, what are the correct meter technical details. That will be a challenge for participants because you can only have, the general rule of thumb is sort of rubbish in equals rubbish out. One of the challenges will be for participants is to get their data clean, and we can assist with that.
Yeah, and as part of market-wide half-hourly, there is a huge data cleanse activity that actually forms part of the programme, isn't there?
Yes,
to make sure that before we sort of enter this sort of start date, the start of the migration period, the industry is as sort of close to the truth as we can be when it comes to, like you said, not just sort of MPAN information, but the correct metering information, address details for a particular MPAN before it then goes through migration. Because I think, we have a lot of industry records that aren't quite held up to date, and that makes it really difficult, especially when you've got customers moving around the industry with different sort of providers to sort of pick up a customer base with a pool of MPANs, and you don't have the correct metering details to be able to sort of onboard that client efficiently. That's
correct, and when I say we can help, I'm really pointing out that we have historically at Stark always assisted suppliers and sometimes TPIs, brokers, and maybe end customers who have a large estate and wish to appoint us as their data collector. We traditionally have and will continue to offer that kind of assistance to help people get their data, their portfolio, the data for their portfolio in as good a shape as it can be before appointing us. And the same goes for sort of the pre-migration. We encourage people to maybe appoint us before the migration period begins, because then you can separate out issues that are to do with data from the inevitable teething issues that will happen during the market-wide half-hourly migration period. There are various cycles within SIT focusing on different aspects of what needs to be built and tested. And prior to that, actually, there's a preliminary phase called PIT, which is pre-integration testing. And that itself covers broadly three areas. So you've got functional, which is what does the system do? Non-functional, which is how it does it, which is related to things like scalability, security, and sort of high-level abstracted kind of solution design. And then you have migration, which is going to be, obviously, it's a one-off event, but it lasts 18 months and is fundamental to the success of the transition. We've been in sort of market-wide half-hourly settlement readiness, you could say, for nearly the last 2 years, sort of on this journey. And I think that is a massive oversight for a lot of people. They don't realise that this thing is happening in the future, but there's so much that we have to do behind the scenes to be ready for that start date, aside from our business as usual activities as well. So I think that technical aspect is, really overlooked by a lot of people who don't work in tech and aren't involved in that development, the build, 100%. And because we are testing our systems at the same time as other participants are testing their systems and the central infrastructure is being tested, it's naturally, there are three areas where it can fail. It can fail because there's something that needs to be addressed in your system, but it can also fail for reasons outside of your control, but you have to work with the program to fix any issues with the central systems, and likewise work with your sort of other participants in the cohort to establish if there is a problem, where where the problem actually lies. Is it with your system? Is it with your design? Is it with theirs? Is it with the central services? So that is naturally more complex because you're not testing your system against something that is rock solid, finished, and absolutely 100% works. So, and that's the reason why the program needed people like ourselves to participate. It's impossible to build that kind of, the central systems, the complexity of those central systems, it would be impossible to build to prove that the design is going to work. The way that you interact with an AMR meter, which is a traditional, usually associated with larger sort of supply points, industrial, commercial. This is where we will dial that meter and we'll pull that data, and it's a sort of, you dial out and you pull back in. There are some meters that do the reverse, but largely it's a pulling operation. With the DCC and SMETS meters, we can't dial those SMETS meters directly. It's not part of the sort of, it's not enabled. So essentially you interact with those meters via a data communications company, which is essentially some infrastructure that then connects to those meters, so you don't directly dial them. What you do is you set up a schedule, and once that schedule is set up, you should start to receive that data. That data should flow into you without any further interaction. Once you've received that data, there may be there will be some processing of that data, and there may be estimation if some of the data is not complete. And you can request sort of more frequent reads of more frequent register reads. You can ask for instantaneous reads, but broadly speaking, it's a more passive. You sort of set up a schedule, and then you just wait for that data to arrive. And from it's really the opposite of the AMR world. And you're also reliant on a technology that's out of your control. So an AMR meter, if there's a phone line or an internet connection, it's down to you and the meter operator. And very often, Stark is the meter operator.
Yeah, as well as the DC.
So we generally advise our customers, if they want really high performing sort of
good quality
service, both for metering and for data collection, they appoint Stark to do both roles. There's nobody else that can be blamed. If there's a problem with that meter, then it's down to us to fix it and collect that data. So we're in complete control, and therefore we can serve, really we can provide a much higher standard of service to our customer.
Definitely.
With the DCC, we can't touch that meter. Even if we can go to site and install it, we can't communicate it with it directly, so we are dependent on a central system that it will have outages and it will have problems, and it will be beyond our direct control to guarantee that we can always resolve it in a given time, because we are reliant on the DCC itself functioning as designed.
And typically SMETS meters are installed in domestic properties, smaller consuming sites, so I think that's why there's always been this distinction between AMR and SMART or SMETS. That AMR provides that higher quality data that a lot of obviously bigger businesses in the industrial and commercial world are looking for, compared to your smaller household, smaller business sites that can potentially afford to not look at that data as frequently because it's lower consuming meters. Another
aspect which is worth considering is if you have a SMETS meter as a domestic customer, you're entitled actually, even though the whole point of a SMETS meter is to give that granular data back to your supplier, and to essentially to help model the kind of data consumption and therefore balance the grid better. The whole point of that can essentially be cancelled out by a customer who feels that it's invasive of their privacy. So they have the ability to essentially not provide consent for that half-hourly data. So that means typically they'll get a register read every day. So you'll know the daily consumption, but you won't know the pattern of that consumption throughout the day. If there were a sort of strong sort of perhaps, if there were a strong sort of internet meme kind of, some sort of pushback against SMETS meters, then actually, domestic customers can withdraw consent, and therefore, as a data collector, you have slightly more granular data, potentially a daily read, but you're not going to have the same kind of, the 48 half-hourly reads that you would get otherwise.
And I suppose when we're talking about customers looking at their energy data and making those changes and sort of analysing where they use their energy, having AMR enables them to do that in a more efficient way, essentially, and a lot more intellectually, to work out when that consumption's happening, to make those changes. If on a domestic level you don't have the option to do that.
Well, I think there's two aspects probably to why it's a benefit two main reasons why I see it as a benefit to develop a lot of the systems for MHHS done entirely in-house, our own IP. One of them, The first one is kind of agility and sort of the cross-functional approach that we have to the design, build, test process. So our testers are involved from the very outset of system design, as are the developers. So we try to make sure that as something that's being designed, built and tested goes through that pipeline, there are no surprises coming. And also developers and testers can really improve the design from the outset. So there's a kind of consensus on what's being built, why it's being built, and everybody has tire kicked that design coming from different viewpoints. And to be able to test that something works is as important as that it actually works. It's possible to design something that works, but you can't be confident that it is going to work because you haven't designed it in such a way that it enables sort of transparent testing, if you like. The other aspect is of why I think Stark is in a particularly good position is just the huge amount of industry knowledge in our operational teams, so that if you were trying to design an MHHS friendly system without decades of industry knowledge behind you, if you were just interpreting design artifacts and process maps, which in theory, hypothetically, it's possible to do. You could build a system without any knowledge of the UK industry just by following the design artifacts created by the programme. You would design probably a terrible system because you have to understand the real world scenarios that will continue to happen, issues around potentially sort of data quality or conflicts about, or unhappy paths, if you like, things that can happen sort of when multiple participants are, interacting in a complex ecosystem. So our experience of knowing that the happy path is fine, all systems have to cope for the happy path, but the unhappy path is thinking what could happen and what in our experience will potentially, existing problems that we have will not all be, eradicated overnight. So our understanding of what can go wrong, and our operational teams and our technology teams are incredibly closely connected. So we could not build the system without their input. And I think people who are potentially looking at sort of software companies that just build software on behalf of, customers, or they come up with an offering, they think MHHS undoubtedly offers, in theory, lowers the barrier for market entry, because they're saying, hey, if you're a software company, you can come and build systems. And you don't need 40 years of industry knowledge because everything's new. Now that's true. You could do that, but you will only have a set of documents. You'll have no deeper understanding of what those business processes that the system is supposed to implement. You'll have no real understanding of those processes and what they really mean to the operational teams that, essentially serve the end customer.
No sense of feeling about actually what customers want from us as well as a business, because you wouldn't have lived that previous sort of experience of and that engagement.
100%. Our operational team's very customer facing, and they understand, they can interpret something through the eyes of a customer. So we try to not build the minimum viable product, which is a term often used in software development, where you don't want to bite off too much. So you say, okay, this is what we build in the first iteration, and it's the bare minimum. The bones. But we haven't really taken that approach because we know what our customers need above and beyond what has been specified by the programme.
And I think everything that Stark does is always built, tested, created, put out to sort of market with the customer at the forefront, because we know that if we do that, it will go well and it will be well received and it will be accepted and adopted and sort of will come back to us essentially. And I think a lot of businesses don't quite, as you sort of said, don't do that anymore. That they build it, it's fit for purpose, but actually is it really fit for purpose, and does it speak to the person who's going to use it at the very, very end of the food chain? And I think that's a confidence thing that a lot of people are looking for actually now with Market-Wide High Family. When you say, I do it all in-house, when you speak to Stark, you're really speaking to Stark. It's not, pick up the phone and it now is somebody else, it's a third party or it's outsourced or an external business. Every part of Stark operationally is in-house essentially, from the metering to the data to the, the building things.
Intellectual property, that in itself may not mean much to all people, but essentially, if you write a book, if if you write some code, if you compose some music, that's all types of intellectual property. Our intellectual property, one of the big advantages we have as a very experienced data collector in the current terminology is the sheer width and breadth of the types of meters that we can communicate with. So in the, again, I'm going to use another acronym, in the AMR market, which are the sort of meters which traditionally are larger supply points.
Yeah.
There's a huge number of meter manufacturers. Now, to be able to communicate with those meters, you have to use what's called a protocol, which is essentially a bit of low-level language that enables communication and interaction with that meter.
Yeah.
So we've written over the decades that Stark has existed a huge bank of these metering protocols. So our coverage, so if a customer or a supplier comes to us and they say, this is our estate, we have thousands of sites, these are all our different types of meters, that will be almost certainly a mixture, a hodgepodge of, more recent, very old.
Yeah.
And we are confident that we can outperform any of our competitors in terms of being able to say, yes, we can communicate with all those meters immediately. And here's the other great benefit is we have a sort of a team of protocol writing experts.
Like a database.
Yeah, but we also have teams. It's quite arcane knowledge. There's not a huge number of people in the industry who could sit down and write a new protocol to talk to a meter that's kind of they've not seen before.
And that's going to be really important as well, because when we're talking about this availability of collecting data more frequently, everything being half-hourly settled, to be able to read and dial every meter is going to be fundamental to enable that part of the process to happen. And if there are limitations with certain providers who can't dial all the different types of metering that is out there, that could be a sort of blocker and a barrier to making sure that the end customer can get that data, and also the supplier can get it for settlement purposes.
100%. And we've certainly, from experience, our customers, if they come to us and say, here's 10,000 meters, that we'd like you to act as data collector for, they don't want us to say, well, we can do 7,000 of them or 8,000 of them, but you'll have to go elsewhere for the other 2,000. So yeah, we try to be the one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And like I say, even if we have never heard of that particular model of meter, it might be something very old, very rare. We have the capability and people who understand how to write protocols from scratch that they can do that. So it's a
huge
valuable,
plus.
It's a very valuable capability.
Definitely.
It's been an area that Stark has had a sort of a long-term partnership with an unmetered supplies operator. And what we found as we've engaged with our customers about MHHS is more and more customers, quite often suppliers, are really looking for an end-to-end solution for their entire portfolio. And if their portfolio includes unmetered supplies, which are typically your sort of street lights, your advertising hoardings, where the consumption is fairly easy to calculate because it's operating for a certain number of hours a day, using a known amount of electricity broadly. It's not cost effective to put a meter on every lamppost. So you might have 20, 30, 50, 100 lampposts, but only one meter, if you like, one MPAN, which then is metered. So the ability to kind of calculate, to be able to collect data from unmetered supplies is something that we've always done in partnership with people who provide that service, but we've recently acquired an unmetered supplies operator, Tim Huckin Limited. So we're now busy integrating their systems and capabilities into the Stark offering. If you're a local authority, you might have dozens of buildings that are offices. You might have local authority owned storage facilities,
or even the Christmas lights we find.
And then you've got, of course, you've got street lighting and all the rest of it. So a lot of our customers are local authorities. So just to be able to say, yep, we can bring that all under one roof, and you'll get the same kind of high quality of service and reliability and accuracy of data.
And that single provider as well for all of those different types of the advanced, the smart and the unmetered section as we advance towards market wide. I think people are looking for that, as you mentioned, one-stop shop. They don't want to have to go to different sort of providers or people within the industry, because we can't facilitate everything, and the way that market wide half hourly is moving towards, away from half hourly, non-half hourly, you know, we can do everything essentially.
That's right, and I think it's always informed our approach, which is rather than say this is what we want to do, we've listened to our customers and said, you know, it might be that there isn't actually a great deal of revenue or profit for us to be able to offer certain services, but we also recognise that if it makes our
customers happy,
if it makes our customers happy and drives the more profitable parts of our business, we're very happy to provide those services. You know, not as loss leaders, but certainly as added benefits to our end customer.
And I think where we've had a lot of our customers for quite a significant period of time now, they've also helped shape our growth actually as we've evolved as a business, where they've said to us, you know, you're my data collector, but I need you to manage the mop as well. I need you to install my meter and manage it, because when you can't get the data, I have to go to a third party, and that doesn't work for me. I need to phone you once. And obviously that has helped in more recent years with obviously our acquisition of Western Power Distribution Smart Metering. You know, we now have that meter operation part in-house. And as obviously you've mentioned with Tim Huckin, you know, bringing in the unmetered part as well, really, I think just joins up this full circle approach for metering and data, which is really exciting as we head towards market wide.
And as people become more disposed to buying EVs for themselves and fleet purchases increase, you find more and more businesses are looking to offer sort of charging facilities, you know, at their places of work, for example, or in car parks or wherever. And because we can then offer the EV service and then the metering on top of that, and then the analytics of that data. Imagine you might have to approach 3 or 4 different companies to just achieve that simple aim of I want to be able to charge EVs, know what it's costing me, what my revenue is from charging that, if assuming I'm charging it, and then
how it impacts my main building meter and my energy bill,
and see it separate from your sort of normal consumption. So certainly, I mean, I've been at Stark for 2 and a bit years, and barely a month goes by where we aren't considering some new initiative on the back of feedback from customers, where the teams who are, the commercial teams are constantly interacting, and the operational teams are constantly interacting with our customers.
We need this.
We need this. You know, our competitors are starting to do that. You know, what can we do that's better than that? Or our customer, you know, there isn't a competitor, but our customer, you know, they like our products, but could you just do X, Y, Z? You know, to make it slightly more useful to that end customer. So barely a month in 2.5 years without some, you know, and not all of those initiatives obviously happen for some reason or other, but a good many of them do. And
it builds a really exciting roadmap for us with the customer, as we've said before, always in mind and driving that growth.
Yeah, and if we can't do something immediately, because you know, priorities and focus is equally important, not to be, you know, not to constantly be trying to do too many things at once. But our roadmaps, our technology roadmaps are always informed by the end customer. Because we're looking at, you know, we don't build things for ourselves, we build things for our customers. And, you know, our success as a business is dependent on our customers, you know, being served, you know, to being given a good service and at a good price.
Definitely.